Now that the 2023-2024 NBA season is officially complete, it is time to grade the seasons of every single team. We're going to go through them starting from the worst grade to the best grade. Here is the NBA report card. Starting off with our lowest grade, the Detroit Pistons get an F from me. This team, there was very low expectations for them to begin with, and they didn't even meet those. Nobody should wonder why Monty Williams is no longer the head coach of the Detroit Pistons, why they're paying him so much money just to go away. I would be surprised if we don't hear free Cade chants. Cade just needs to be traded. They need to start over. This core is just not going to work, even though they have some big names on that roster. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets, I'm going to give them a D+. I'm not 100% sure if LaMelo Ball can be a cornerstone player for this franchise and play winning basketball. He's a really fun player to watch, but for me, I think he's slowly turning into a Jordan Poole type of guy. You're not going to win a bunch of basketball games. He's going to have all kinds of highlights. I don't know if he's going to lead you to a winning record and be successful in a playoff situation. I'm also going to give Golden State a D+. It's just time to let go of this core of the 2010s. Clay and Draymond, for what they want and what they are being paid, just are not worth it. Steph's really the only one that's still bringing value to this team in 2024. It's time to move on from those guys, whether it's just letting them walk in free agency or trading them, but it's time to give up and let these new guys come in and maybe a mini rebuild, but maybe these new guys can help Steph get another ring or at least stay competitive towards the end of his career. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm also giving them a D+. After they pretty much destroyed their depth and traded everything to get Bradley Beal. A first-round sweep is not what you want to see. A 6th seed is not what you want to see. Overall, just not a successful season. The only way that they're going to fix this team without giving up one of their big three is to find cheap players that are going to bring them the depth that they need. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I think somebody's going to have to be traded for that to happen. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls, I'm giving them a D. This front office just needs to blow up this core of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic. They also need to realize that Lonzo Ball just isn't going to come back. As much as it hurts, I love watching Lonzo Ball play. I don't think he's coming back to the NBA. I just don't. And if he does, he's not going to be the player that he was before he was injured. They just need to blow it up and rebuild, and hopefully Kobe White is enough of a star to keep fans watching their games and somebody to build around. The Memphis Grizzlies are also getting a D grade from me. Now, this is a little bit of a weird one just because there's so many injuries, but you still had Desmond Bane for 42 games. You still had Jaren Jackson for 66 games. I know you only had Ja for 9 games, but those two guys, I would assume you can win more than just 27 games with this squad. This basically just turned into a G League squad with tryouts for the NBA. You did get a young guy, G.G. Jackson, that could become something. We'll see what he becomes moving forward. I think he has a lot of potential. The Washington Wizards are also getting a D grade from me. I don't like the Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma duo. I think I've been pretty open about that. I just don't think this duo is going to work. A lot of highlights, not winning basketball. I don't think those two will win in Washington together. I think realistically they should just trade them both. Maybe they can change the culture and not get rid of those guys because they are two good players, and maybe they can change the culture in Washington. Atlanta's getting a C- from me. Now, at the time of the recording, they have already traded DeJounte Murray, but that was on my list of things they needed to do, that the Trae Young-DeJounte Murray duo is just not going to work. Obviously, they have the number 1 pick, so they do have a good start to a rebuild, but the question is, will Trae Young stick around for this rebuild, or is he going to be traded soon? That'll be something that we'll watch for this offseason. The Los Angeles Lakers are also getting a C- grade from me. LeBron's not going to get any younger. This team was actually pretty healthy this season. There really isn't any excuses with things like that as to why this team was not successful. Barely above 500, and just overall a disappointing year, especially since LeBron is only going to get older. Miami's going to get a C- from me as well. This core of Jimmy, Bam, Tyler Hero is so weird to me because some years it seems like everything's clicking and then they're going to the finals. Other years, they lose in the first round. Now, I know Jimmy Butler's hurt, so we didn't get to see playoff Jimmy this year, but realistically, once they were going to play the Celtics in the first round, they were not going to win that series. This was going to be a first-round exit. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think they can go in different directions this offseason, but I think if they run it back with the exact same roster, they're going to get the exact same result moving forward. Toronto's going to get a C- from me. Now, they made the right decision by trading Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. I think they've locked up a lot of money early in this offseason with Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes. I know I didn't necessarily want to mention the offseason, but I think those guys proved that they were positive assets, so that makes sense why they extended them here. Now, just looking at the regular season, I think that the question moving forward is, can Scotty Barnes actually be a franchise player for them, or is he a good second or third option? Are they still looking for their franchise guy, or do they have him? The Jazz also get a C- from me. Now this is just a middle of the pack, like lower tier team. They're never gonna be bad enough to be in the running for a top pick, but it's gonna take a miracle for them to get even into the play-in. They need to change something. They either need to trade guys like Lauri Markkanen and just commit to a full-on rebuild, or trade some of these young guys and try and push into being a playoff team. I think they should just go the rebuild route. Brooklyn's going to get a C from me. They need to fully commit to the rebuild. Nick Claxton needs to go. Cal Bridges already went. Ben Simmons needs to go. Pretty much anybody that's over about like 23, 24 needs to get off this roster. They need to just completely start over. They thought they may have had something with what they got back from KD. Very clear that they made the playoffs because they already had a good enough record from the KD, Kyrie, James Harden team that blew up halfway through that year. So now it's time to go full rebuild. The Clippers are also getting a C grade from me. The Kawhi Leonard PG era in Los Angeles hasn't really brought any success. They've been a very good regular season team and are constantly making the playoffs, but there's not a lot of postseason success to show for it. Another round one exit is proof of that. A lot of them are hitting free agency. We'll see if they can keep this core together or if they decide to go a different route moving forward. Portland's also going to get a C for me. This was a really weird year. Obviously, you just traded away your franchise guy in Damian Lillard, so there's going to be some major changes moving forward. The one thing is that while they had guys that developed well, first of all, I don't think DeAndre Ayton stays long-term for the rebuild. But second of all, nobody necessarily had a massive blow-up. They had a lot of guys that progressed well, but nobody took the next step to be like the star of this team. They'll have some fun players to watch to keep fans entertained while they do this rebuild, but they're still missing a couple pieces before they can even try and push to be a playoff team. The Cavs are going to get a B- grade from me. The Donovan Mitchell era, post-trade, they have just been a middle-of-the-pack playoff team. They're constantly a 4-5 seed, but there's not a lot of playoff success to show for it. The real question is, can this core break through and finally make a playoff push, especially with how the East has changed since that trade? Only time will tell, but something needs to change moving forward. Next up, Milwaukee's going to get a B- from me. The Damian Lillard, Giannis duo looked good when they were both healthy, and obviously injuries started to stack up towards the end of the year, which is why they were bounced early. But I don't think there's any reason to give up on this duo or this core in general. There are some tweaks that need to be made to this roster, but I think this team overall is in a good spot. The New Orleans Pelicans are also going to get a B- grade from me. At 49-33, that is the best record that the Pelicans have had since drafting Zion. It's just the second time they've even made the playoffs. This team has not had a ton of success in the postseason. They've just been an okay team since drafting Zion. If they want to keep Zion and Brandon Ingram as the franchise guys, they need to make some moves this offseason that are going to put them in a better spot to be a winning team, because right now they're just a better version of the Jazz, just a middle of the pack team that's just a tick up and is going to make the playoffs. Philly's also going to get a B- from me. Obviously, 39 games from Joel Embiid is going to limit the success of this team, especially after trading Harden away. However, Tyrese Maxey has proved that he can be the running mate for Embiid moving forward. He is going to be a great second option for this team for the next 7-8 years, as long as they can keep him happy and keep Embiid healthy. This team should bounce back next year, but because of performance this year, they're going to get a B- from me. Kings are also going to get a B- from me. This is a super fun team to watch, super young team, but they're just like 1 or 2 moves away from truly being a good playoff team right now. Kind of like New Orleans, kind of like Utah. They're just a better Utah. They're just like New Orleans. They're just going to be a 7, 8, 9 seed. And maybe if they have a really good year, they'll be a 5 or 6 seed. But to break that cycle, they're going to have to make a couple moves. They're going to have to move on from some guys that may be fan favorites to get to that next level. The Spurs get a B- from me. I know this is a little bit high, but really there was no expectations and the team wasn't very good. We knew that going into the season, but the big plus is that Wemby isn't a bust. He's clearly going to be a generational guy. Now, Can we build around him? That's going to be the question moving forward. Can we keep Wemby here and happy for his prime and play winning basketball? That's yet to be determined, but hopefully they continue down the path of building him a great team. Houston's going to get a B from me. This is a team that last offseason, I had no clue what they were trying to do. I didn't like any of the moves that they were making, but it absolutely worked. Turned around this team post Harden. This is a team that, even though they missed the playoffs at 41-41, should be happy with their season and should be in the fight for a playoff spot moving forward. Denver gets a B+ from me. Obviously didn't go back to back, lost in the second round. Somewhat of a disappointing end to the season, but it was still an overall good season, and they have the core locked up long term, so they should be able to run it back. They'll be a contender moving forward, but because it was a second round exit, I gotta give them a B+. New York's getting a B+ from me. I have a whole essay on how they've rebuilt this team. I've kind of been like a pseudo fan of this team. This has kind of become my second team. I really like what New York has done. They're going to get a B+ from me just because they haven't necessarily had the postseason success or the deep runs with this core yet, but it was still a really, really good season. Orlando is going to get a B+ from me. Paolo Banchero is the most ignored number 1 pick of at least this decade. I mean, dude is an absolute star. He's the reason Orlando is even relatively on the map. At 47-35, they finally had their breakout year. Now they're about a move away from being a contender because Paolo Banchero is a star and we need to start giving him more media attention. OKC Thunder are going to get an A- from me. At some point, this team was going to explode and be a top seed and will stay a top seed for the next 5-6 years, and it finally happened. It was going to happen one of these years coming up, and it finally did. Really exciting team, really fun team to watch. Obviously did not go all the way, got to the second round, lost the eventual Western Conference champs. There's nothing to be ashamed of this season. This was actually a very good season for them. Because of that, they'll get an A- grade. Indiana's going to get an A from me. Trading for Pascal Siakam gave Tyrese Haliburton his running mate for the next 5 years. This team, I believe, is going to be a contender for the next 5 years. I don't think this run is a fluke at all. They'll be able to repeat this success out east. Really good season, and a conference finals trip is just more experience for this young team in the playoffs. A for me. So Timberwolves are also going to get an A from me. This is the most successful season I've ever watched as a Timberwolves fan. This is the most successful season I've seen in my life, and this is the most successful, or the second most successful season of the franchise history. Not much more needs to be said. I know it was a very bad ending to the season, but still overall a great season. And as a Timberwolves fan, I'm super excited about our future. A for the Timberwolves. For the NBA's runners-up, the Dallas Mavericks also get an A. A 50-win season and a finals appearance proves that the way that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving play basketball can win you games in the postseason. Now it's a question of, can they repeat it year over year? And can Luka keep his complaining to the refs in check? Because that's one of the things that A, rubs people the wrong way, and B, hurts them down the stretch of seasons because refs don't want to deal with it. If that's the greatest knock on Luka's game, he's one of the best players in the league, and this team is set up for the long-term future with Luka. With that, they'll get an A. And finally, the NBA champs, the Boston Celtics, will get an A+. Not much more needs to be said. This team made the sacrifice of a fan favorite in Marcus Smart to bolster their roster and finally win their championship. The end goal of every NBA team is to win the championship, so the only thing that needs to be said is mission accomplished. So those are my grades for all 30 NBA teams. Let me know your thoughts and how you would have graded these teams and what you would have changed down below. And other than that, I'm out. Peace.